Now, if you watch The Big Bang Theory, which is a comedy on CBS, who watches it? Big Bang Theory? Oh, good. You might recognize this sentence. You're in my spot. The Big Bang Theory is a comedy about 4 geniuses who work at a university in Pasadena, California. And each of them is a bit quirky in their own way, but Sheldon is the king of quirkiness. He will only sit in one spot in his apartment, and if anybody else is sitting in his preferred location, he will look at them with a dead-eyed, accusatory stare, saying, "You're in my spot." There's a clip from the first episode of the show where Sheldon explains why his spot is his spot. Sound will come soon. We think it will. Sheldon is the one standing up talking to Penny, who's a new neighbor. And she's in his spot. And she said, "But can't you sit somewhere else?" And he explains, "No, I can't. Because in the summer there's a cross breeze from there and there. And I sit in such a place where I can see the TV without turning my head. And I could go on, but I'm sure you get the point. Why can't you sit next to me? Just take a seat and let her express. I'll try." And he walks around. Isn't this fun? Looking uncomfortably at every other possible location. No, no, no. Leonard finally says,
"Sheldon, sit!"
Yes. And so you get the point. Should we try it again with all the sound? Can we do it again with all the sound? Karen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Because while my narration is wonderful.
Do you guys mind if I start?
Penny, that's where I sit.
Sit next to me.
No, I sit there.
What's the difference?
What's the difference? Here we go. In the winter, that seat is close enough to the radiator to remain warm, and yet not so close as to cause perspiration. In the summer, it's directly in the path of a cross breeze created by opening windows there and there. It faces the television at an angle that is neither direct, thus discouraging conversation, nor so far wide as to create a parallax distortion. I could go on, but I think I've made my point.
Do you want me to move?
Well, just sit somewhere else. Fine. Sheldon, sit!
Well, in the story this morning, Jesus was having dinner with the leader of the Pharisees in today's story. And as the leader of the Pharisees, this man was quite wealthy. Now, the dinner was a Sabbath dinner. And by the 7th verse, Jesus had already challenged some of the teachings of the Pharisees about the Sabbath. So this leader of the Pharisees was watching Jesus quite closely. Now, Jesus, in turn, was watching others take their place at the table. The closer one sat to the head of the table, the more important and powerful you were. Position meant power and prestige, so the guests all worked very hard to sit to near the top of the head of the table so that they could claim the prestige and power that came with sitting next to one of the Pharisee bigwigs. Jesus, if you listen closely, as each guest looked at those near the head of the table, those down near the other end, you can almost hear them think, "You're in my spot." Now, Jesus watched this behavior and heard their unspoken thoughts and finally told everyone to stop trying to get the best seat. Rather than fight for positions of prestige and power, he told the other guests that they should sit in the least powerful and prestigious places. That way, the host would not be forced to ask them to move from the best seat to the least best seat. If they sat in the least prestigious places at the table one day, the host might actually invite them to move up to the head of the table. And the honor of moving to a better spot would come from one of their peers rather than their own ego. Jesus was trying to tell the guests that those who think they are better than they are will one day be humbled, and those who are humble will one day be given a position of honor. What Jesus was really talking about was privilege. Privilege is the assumption that who we are and what we are warrants the best, while others deserve less. Sheldon on the Big Bang Theory assumed that his spot was his alone. It was the best seat in the house, and no one but Sheldon deserved that spot. Now, whether we admit it or not, and whether he would admit it or not, Sheldon was acting like a privileged person. Now, many of us live with privilege, whether we know it or admit it or not. Just because we are who we are given position and power, whether we have earned it or not. Because we are who we are not aware of how hard life is for some people. Because we are who we are, we believe that we should get the job we want, the home we want, the health care we want, the respect we want, and the opportunities we want. Because we are who we are, we may not even be aware that others have a hard time getting any of those things. I know that I'm privileged. And I know that for one reason, because I never worry when I'm stopped by the police for any reason. I never worry when I'm stopped by the police while I'm driving. I know I'm privileged because I can get away with things that others cannot. For instance, the left headlight on my smart car has been out for almost a month. I don't know where to get it replaced, and frankly, I'm too lazy to figure it out. In spite of driving with only one headlight in our community, on I-43 and in all around the city of Milwaukee, I have not been stopped once by local law enforcement. My car is unique enough in Manitowoc and Two Rivers that I know it's known. I'm privileged. And without the job I have, the skin color I have, the citizenship I have, and the language ability I have, I know I would have been stopped. I'm privileged. And I gotta tell you, it's easy to accept and really love privilege. But I think this morning Jesus would look at me and say, oh, for heaven's sakes, Carly, stop acting like you deserve the best place at the table and just get the headlight fixed. I suspect Jesus would look at other aspects of my privileged life and tell me to go sit at the lower end of the table. Now, please understand, I don't think being privileged is a flaw or a fault. It comes to us simply by virtue of who we are. It's kind of like inheriting wealth. We can't blame somebody for inheriting wealth, just as we can't blame anyone for being born into privilege. But it's what we do with it that matters. It's what we do with privilege. It's what we do with wealth. We can't help who we are, but we can do something about how we use those blessings we have been given. And that's what Jesus told his host next. He told the leader of the Pharisees that the next time he held a fancy meal, he should not invite the people he knew could repay him. Instead, the next time he gave a fancy meal, he should invite the outcasts in the community, the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. Jesus told the Pharisee that he should invite the outcasts of his society to come sit at his fancy table, eat his expensive food, shut his mouth so he could listen to the thoughts of those who had less privilege. Jesus asked the Pharisee leader to adopt humility before life found a way to humble him. Now, the good news is I've never seen anyone in this congregation look at someone else with a "you're in my spot" kind of look or attitude. We may have thought it, but we didn't act like it. In fact, I've seen people deliberately going out of their way to greet people they do not know. I've seen our members greeting guests with open arms. I've seen our members go out of their way to be gracious and hospitable. And all of that's really good, but I have to tell you, I wonder what Jesus would say about our record with those who live with less privilege than we do. Friends, we struggle to find volunteers to serve the Sunday supper for our community. We struggle to find people to work at Hope House when it's our turn. We struggle to find people who are willing to help raise money for missions by working with brat fry stands. Our picnic, which is coming on September 11th, keep that in your minds, is on the front lawn, is open to all the members of our congregation and beyond. But last summer, the Reed Avenue and 9th Street members sat at one set of tables, while our Camino de Fe members sat at a different set of tables. I wonder what Jesus would say about that. I wonder what Jesus would say about our record of inviting people to the Falls Festival. That's a chili supper with a fun auction and antics to follow. I wonder what he would say about our record in inviting people who we know will not buy anything, people who may not be able to afford the chili supper. What he'd say about our record of inviting those people to come and enjoy the good food, enjoy the company, enjoy the antics, enjoy the evening. 3 weeks ago, I asked people to sign up to offer van rides to those who have trouble getting to church. The idea is to be able to pick up children around the area of Washington Park because we know there are a lot of children there. No one signed up. Not one person. I know a lot of our members go and volunteer to pick up people to come to church that we all know and that we all love, but not one person was willing to sign up to pick up somebody we don't know. Since Vacation Bible School touched my heart, and keep in mind, I probably wouldn't have signed up either. What does that say about our appreciation of our privilege? Since Vacation Bible School touched my heart, I keep wondering what Lakeshore Church and those of us who call this place home can do to connect with people in our community who do not enjoy the same privilege that we do. Well, last Monday evening, Bruce Peters and I went down to watch the basketball game at Washington Park. And as we were talking to the young men and some of their families, young women and kids, we discovered that the city has no kind of tournament for our basketball players. So we thought our community, our congregation, should put on a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, complete with a roster, like the Final Four. March Madness, like March Madness, where you play a game, you take your 3 guys, play against others, or women, and play a game, whoever gets the most points moves on. Complete with prizes, complete with money prizes. It's something that we could do to say that Lakeshore Church is here in the community to serve all the members of our community. Now it's going to take some volunteer help. So far I've gotten 1 volunteer, but if you think this is a worthwhile project, we need help getting the prizes, we need help getting the referees, we need help getting the city on board. I don't think it's going to be hard. We need help. If you're willing to help, please talk to me, because we should make this happen. It's a way to reach out and engage and be involved. So the question for all of us to work on this week is, am I a person of privilege? Am I a person of privilege? And if our answer is yes, and the vast majority of us will say yes, what can we do as individuals and a congregation to include those who have less privilege to join us for good food and good conversation? What can we do so those with less privilege feel free to participate in everything we do? What can we do so those with less privilege feel free to speak up and share their thoughts, their feelings, and their experiences? What can we do so that those who have less privilege feel not like honored guests, but like partners? Equal, respected, loved partners. Because I think if Jesus were here this morning, he would remind us, bless you, he would remind us to be humble. I think he would remind us that the vast majority of us are privileged people. And I think he would tell us, urge us, to invite the version of outcast in our society today. The outcasts that were called in the first century the poor, the lame, the crippled, and the blind. To invite the outcasts who have less privilege to be our guests every time we host anything. We can do that. Because if we don't, I fear that one day those with less privilege and those for whom we have not taken the time and effort to include will come up to us, look at us and say, "You're in my spot." Amen. We can do something right now.